She was already gone before anyone knew to look. Not missing, not wandered off, not confused in the way people assume when a woman of 84 doesn't answer her phone. Gone, taken, removed from her own bedroom in the dead of night with the kind of precision that doesn't happen by accident and the kind of silence that doesn't happen without planning. The cameras saw something, they just didn't record it. By the time the sun came up over that Arizona desert, her medications were still sitting on the kitchen counter. Her pacemaker had gone quiet, and the man who had walked her to her own front door just hours before, the last human being confirmed to have seen her alive, was 4 miles away. At home, asleep, or so the story goes. Here is what should terrify you: this was not chaos. There was no forced entry, no ransacked drawers, no signs of a struggle that couldn't be explained away. Whoever did this knew exactly which lights to kill, exactly which door would be unlocked, and exactly how long they had before anyone would notice. 41 minutes. They were inside that house for 41 minutes, and they left behind almost nothing, almost. Because somewhere 2 miles from that house, in a place no one was supposed to find, evidence was waiting. Not one DNA profile. Two unknown men. 2 separate biological signatures, neither one in any database, neither one belonging to any one law enforcement could immediately name. 2 men, 1 plan, and a family that would spend the next month falling apart in public, except for one person who said absolutely nothing. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to show you, nobody has put together like this. Drop your theories in the comments. I want to see them before I give you mine. This is Capital Sentence Files. And before this is over, you are going to ask yourself how something this calculated could happen inside a family, and why the answer was hiding in plain sight for 19 years. Let's get into it. She was already gone before anyone knew to look. Not missing, not confused, not wandered off into the Arizona night the way people assume when an elderly woman does not answer her phone. Gone, taken, removed from her own home in the dead of night with a level of precision that does not happen by accident and a level of silence that does not happen without planning. The cameras saw something, they just did not record it. By the time the sun came up over the Catalina foothills, her medications were still sitting on the kitchen counter. Her pacemaker had gone quiet, her shoes were still by the door, and the man who had walked her to her own front door just hours earlier, the last confirmed person to see her alive, was 4 miles away. At home, asleep, or so the story goes. Here is what makes this case different from every other disappearance you have heard about. This was not chaos. There was no broken door, no ransacked drawers, no sign that anything was wrong at all until everything was. Whoever did this knew which lights to kill, which door would be open, and exactly how much time they had before the neighborhood came alive. 41 minutes. They were inside that house for 41 minutes. And what they left behind, or more precisely, what they did not, is what has kept the FBI, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and federal investigators working around the clock ever since. The victim is Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, mother of 3, a woman who had lived in the same Tucson community for over 5 decades, and the mother of one of the most recognizable journalists on American television. Her daughter Savannah Guthrie anchors the NBC Today show. On the morning Nancy was discovered missing, Savannah was preparing to cover the Winter Olympics on the other side of the world. Timing like that does not happen by accident. This is Capital Sentence Files. If you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on your notifications, because what I am about to walk you through has not been laid out like this anywhere else. Every name, every piece of evidence, every detail that the headlines missed. Stay with me. Before we get into what happened, you need to know who Nancy Guthrie is, not as a headline, not as a victim, as a person. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She was a daughter of the American Midwest, the kind of woman who built her life quietly, deliberately, and without needing an audience for it. She met Charles Guthrie, married him, and in the early 1970s the two of them packed up and moved their family to Tucson, Arizona. They put down roots in the Catalina foothills, an affluent, quiet stretch of desert living on the northeast edge of the city. Good streets, good neighbors, the kind of neighborhood where people know each other's names and nobody locks their gate at night because nothing ever happens there. They raised 3 children together, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. Nancy poured herself into that family. And then in 1988, Charles died suddenly while on a mining exploration trip in Mexico. He was 49 years old. Nancy was 46. She had 3 children, a house in the desert, and the rest of her life ahead of her, and she handled it the way she handled everything. She stayed. She raised her kids. She remained in that same Tucson community for the next 38 years. By 2026, Nancy was 84. Her mind, according to the Pima County Sheriff who would later stand at a podium and speak about her case, was completely intact, sharp, aware, engaged, but her body had slowed considerably. She had limited mobility. She could not walk significant distances on her own. She relied on daily medication to manage conditions that, without consistent dosing, could become life-threatening. She had a pacemaker. She was, in the clinical language investigators would later use, a vulnerable adult, not because of her mind, but because of what her body could and could not do. She lived alone in the home she had shared with Charles, the same home her children grew up in. She had a Nest security camera system installed outside. Most people would assume that means she was protected, monitored, that if something happened there would be footage. But Nancy had never paid for an active cloud recording subscription. Her cameras could detect motion. They could send alerts to a phone. They were not recording continuously. They were not saving anything. Someone knew that. The question is who? January 31, 2026, a Saturday. Nancy spent the evening the way she had spent dozens of evenings before it. She Ubered to her daughter Annie's home in the late afternoon. The rideshare record later confirmed she was picked up at approximately 5:32 p.m. Annie and her husband Tommaso Shini hosted dinner and a game night. It was relaxed. It was familiar. Nobody who was there that evening has described anything unusual about Nancy's mood, her health, or the atmosphere in the house. It was, by every account, a normal Saturday night with family. When the evening wound down, Tommaso Shini drove Nancy home. That detail matters. Not Annie, not a car service. Tommaso, the man who had been married to Annie since 2006, the man who had sat at Nancy's kitchen table for 20 years of family dinners. He knew that house. He drove her the 4 miles back to the Catalina foothills and pulled into her driveway. The garage door opened at approximately 9:48 p.m. and closed at 9:50 p.m. Sheriff Chris Nanos would later say at a press conference. And I am paraphrasing here. That is the time we assume Nancy was home and probably going to bed. Shini told investigators he waited until she was safely inside before he left. 4 miles back to his own house, roughly 10 minutes on empty desert roads. That was the last time Nancy Guthrie was seen alive by anyone who has since spoken publicly. The following morning was February 1, a Sunday. Nancy was expected to watch a live-streamed church service with a friend. She did not appear. The friend could not reach her. The call went to the family. Annie and Cameron went to check on her. What met them when they arrived is what ended any hope that this was a simple welfare check. Nancy was not inside. Her phone was on a table. Her medications were on the kitchen counter, the same medications she needed every day to manage conditions that without consistent dosing could become life-threatening. Her car was parked in the garage, and at the back of the house, 2 exterior doors were propped wide open. Annie's first thought, she would later tell NBC's Today show, was that paramedics had been there. That her mother had suffered a medical episode, and first responders had propped the doors open for easier access given Nancy's severe mobility limitations. That was the story Annie told herself for the first few seconds. Then they reached the front of the house. The doorbell camera had been physically yanked off the wall, and there was blood on the front doorstep, confirmed later by investigators to be Nancy's. The family called 911 at noon. The Pima County Sheriff's Department arrived, and within hours Sheriff Chris Nanos made a determination. This was not a wellness check. This was not a fall. This was a crime scene. The FBI was contacted the same afternoon and was on the ground before the day was over. Nancy Guthrie had not wandered off. She had been taken out of her bedroom, through her house, past her medications, past her shoes, out into the Arizona night. And the person who last confirmed she was safely inside her own home had driven away 4 miles in the dark. 9 days after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, the FBI made a move that shifted this case from a regional news story into something the entire country was watching. On February 10, FBI Director Kash Patel released 6 black and white photographs and 3 video clips recovered from Nancy's doorbell camera. He posted them directly to social media. The footage was grainy, low resolution, the way doorbell camera footage always is when you actually need it to be sharp. But what it showed was unmistakable. A man on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, masked, armed, and completely calm. The FBI's physical description, released on February 12 after further analysis of the footage, was precise. Male, approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, average build, black ski mask, black nitrile gloves, khaki pants, sneakers, a jacket, a handgun holster strapped to his body, a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack on his back, a backpack sold exclusively through Walmart under their private label outdoor brand, priced at under $20, with reflective safety strips running down the sides. The FBI did not refer to this man as a person of interest. They called him the suspect. That is a deliberate choice of language, and it carries legal and investigative weight. Now here is the detail that reshaped the entire investigation from that point forward. The images were not all taken on the same morning. Investigators in Tucson believed one of the images Patel posted, showing the man without a backpack or a gun, was not from the date of the abduction, but possibly from weeks earlier, as the man appeared to surveil the home. Wikipedia, a source, confirmed to CNN that the 2 sets of images were captured on different days. Authorities had hoped to keep specific details of that image confidential while they worked to identify the suspect and a motive. Wikipedia ABC News reported the same conclusion independently. Then CBS. Then NBC. 4 networks, 4 separate source chains, all confirming the same thing. The suspect had been to Nancy Guthrie's front porch before February 1. Making multiple trips to the front door fit with the investigative assumption that the abduction was planned in advance and may have involved some pre-operational surveillance and reconnaissance. Wikipedia. The Pima County Sheriff's Department pushed back. Without confirmed timestamps on the images, they said drawing conclusions was speculative. But the images existed, and the pattern they outlined was harder to dismiss than any press statement. What the footage also showed was how the suspect moved. He did not arrive at the porch and search for the camera. He walked directly to it. He knew exactly where it was. He reached up and attempted to knock it loose with a series of light taps. When that failed, he picked up foliage from a nearby potted plant and covered the lens with it. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer reviewed the footage publicly and described him as very nonchalant and very comfortable, operating as though he was in a safe environment. Former FBI profiler Jim Clement, also reviewing the footage publicly, noted what he believed was a tattoo or marking visible on the suspect's right wrist in the gap between the glove and the sleeve. Then there was the holster. It was positioned over the center of his body, an arrangement that firearms analysts described as something no one with tactical training would ever use. And the overall gear, the cheap backpack, the reflective strips that should have been removed, the off-position holster totaled under $100. The question investigators were sitting with was whether that reflected someone who did not know better, or someone who wanted to look like they did not know better. Because moving an 84-year-old woman who could not walk 50 yards under her own power out of a house in the middle of the night is not something one person does alone. The FBI was not just looking at February 1. From the earliest days of the investigation, they were working backward, pulling surveillance footage, canvassing neighbors, and asking a specific question. How long had someone been watching Nancy Guthrie before they took her? The answer, when it came into focus, was unsettling. In mid-January, a neighbor named Aldine Meister noticed a man walking near the intersection that leads to Nancy's home. He was younger. He was not dressed for a walk. His hat was pulled far down over his eyes. She mentioned it to her husband at the time but did not think to report it until after Nancy disappeared. She described him simply. He just did not look like he belonged there. That observation pointed investigators to a specific window. The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department went back to every neighbor on the street and formally requested all home security footage going back to January 1, a full month before the abduction. They were specifically focused on January 11, requesting footage from that night between 9 p.m. and midnight. That window, that date, investigators kept returning to it without ever publicly explaining what they believed happened during those 3 hours. Then came January 23. A man appeared on a Ring camera at a home 6.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's property. It was approximately 5 a.m., still dark, and the way he approached the door was not normal. He walked backward, not stumbling, not disoriented, deliberately, methodically, and with complete control of his movements. He backed his way up to the front door of a stranger's home and rang the doorbell. To understand why that matters, you need to understand how Ring cameras work. Consumer doorbell cameras use passive infrared sensors that sit dormant until body heat activates them. Once triggered, there is a 1 to 2 second lag before the processor wakes, the lens adjusts, and the Wi-Fi handshake completes and recording begins. Walk toward a camera and those first critical seconds capture your face at its clearest as you close the distance. Walk backward, and by the time the camera is actually recording, your face is already pointed away from the lens. The footage captures nothing but the back of your head and the back of your jacket. You have already defeated the most important window of exposure before the camera even knows you are there. The man on January 23 knew that. He was not guessing. He had studied it, understood it, and was testing whether it worked in a real environment under real conditions. When the homeowner's dog started barking inside, he fled. But here is the detail that stood out to investigators immediately. He maintained his backward orientation the entire time he retreated. He did not spin around and run the way every human instinct would demand when startled in the dark. He backed away from the property the same way he had approached it, deliberately, keeping his face away from the lens until he was completely out of frame. He had dark hair. Facial hair consistent with a goatee. TMZ obtained the video and published their report on February 13, confirming that a high-ranking law enforcement source told them the FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department were both aware of the footage and were actively treating it as a potential lead in Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping. His facial hair, his build, and his behavior were all noted as consistent with the suspect. The FBI had already identified in the doorbell footage released from Nancy's home. But the reconnaissance did not stop at camera testing. On the night of February 1, the same night Nancy was taken, investigators discovered that a separate internet outage had affected Ring cameras across the neighborhood surrounding Nancy's property. The FBI opened a specific line of inquiry into that outage, working to determine whether it was coincidental or whether someone had deliberately disrupted the local network as part of the operation. A localized internet disruption in the hours of an abduction in the same neighborhood on the same night is not a detail investigators walk past. It became part of the broader picture of how methodically this had been planned. 9 days passed between January 23 and February 1. Then the Ozark Trail backpack with its reflective safety strips appeared on Nancy Guthrie's porch at 2:12 a.m., but something fundamental had shifted between those two dates. On January 23, the suspect tested a camera at a stranger's home 6.5 miles away and fled the moment a dog made noise. On February 1, he stood at the actual target property and covered the lens without a trace of urgency. No flinching, no rushing. The composure of someone who had already done the hard work and knew exactly what to expect. January 23 was not a crime. It was an examination of his own plan, and the fact that no police showed up the following morning told him everything he needed to know. February 1 was not improvised. It was not opportunistic. It was the execution of a plan that had been built, tested, and confirmed over weeks. By the time he stepped onto Nancy Guthrie's porch in the early hours of that Sunday morning, he already knew he was invisible. The only thing left was to finish what he had started. The doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's home disconnected at exactly 1:47 a.m. on February 1. Her pacemaker lost its Bluetooth connection to her phone at 2:28 a.m. That is a window of 41 minutes. And inside those 41 minutes, everything that mattered in this case happened. To understand what that window actually required, you have to think through it operationally. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old with severely limited mobility. Savannah Guthrie would later confirm in her March 26 Today show interview that her mother had been living with tremendous pain that restricted her movement significantly. She was in her bedroom, asleep, in the middle of the night. Before she could be removed from that house, she had to be located in the dark. She had to be physically managed and moved from her bedroom through the hallway and toward an exit. She had to be carried or supported out the door and loaded into a vehicle. All of that had to happen while someone simultaneously managed the external environment, monitoring the street, keeping the exit clear, and ensuring nothing in the neighborhood stirred. Professional burglars operate in 5-minute windows. 10 minutes inside a stranger's home is considered sloppy. 20 is reckless. 41 minutes is either catastrophic incompetence or the work of people who were not afraid of being caught because they had prepared everything in advance. Fox News drone footage obtained in the days after Nancy's disappearance showed smashed floodlights at the rear of the property. The doorbell camera faced the front. Disabling rear lighting and tampering with the front camera at the same moment requires two separate positions on the property simultaneously. That is not improvisation. That is a coordinated two-point entry with agreed-upon timing. Then came the detail that retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coughlindaffer identified when she analyzed the footage publicly. In the doorbell camera video, a small device is visible in the suspect's pocket, a square shape with an antenna protruding from it. Coughlindaffer described it publicly as a handheld walkie-talkie. Her conclusion was direct. The suspects were not carrying cell phones. Cell phones register on towers and can be used to triangulate exactly where a person was at any given moment. Walkie-talkies operate on radio frequencies. They leave no digital footprint. They cannot be traced back to a cell tower. Coughlindaffer's words on this were precise. It seems like possibly they were communicating by walkie-talkie, which would not register on a cell tower and could not be used to triangulate what cell phones were there. Her assessment was that they were sophisticated enough not to use cell phones, and she was unambiguous about what the walkie-talkie proved. At least one other person was present. You do not carry a two-way radio to talk to yourself. The staging did not begin on February 1. Federal investigators returned to Nancy's Catalina Foothills neighborhood weeks into the investigation and began asking residents specifically about a vacant property, a home near Nancy's residence that had been vacated by its neighbor shortly before she disappeared. News Nation correspondent Brian N. Tin, who has been reporting from Tucson throughout this case, confirmed on March 17 that FBI agents were specifically asking neighbors about that property and the person who moved out. Retired Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Krieger, speaking to Parade, explained why that property matters. A location like that, out of the prying eye of the neighborhood, could serve as a home base or staging location for suspects. It would provide a cover story to be in the area at different times. It would allow someone to observe the comings and goings of the neighborhood, track Nancy's routine, and map the timing of everything, including when she came and went, and when the street went quiet. Agents were also asking residents for something else. Several homes in the neighborhood were under active construction in the weeks before February 1. The FBI requested the names of every contractor and construction worker who had been on those sites. The reasoning is clear. Access to a construction project near a target's home provides the same cover a vacant property does. You can be present, visible, and unremarkable. Nobody questions a worker in a neighborhood with active building projects. A car was captured on a separate camera moving at speed near Nancy Street during the 41-minute window. News Nation confirmed the footage. Retired Detective Jerry Dabb, speaking to the same outlet, assessed the logistics of the full operation and concluded that between 2 and 4 accomplices were likely involved. His reasoning was straightforward. The logistics of something of this magnitude are too much for one person to handle alone. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed publicly he had never ruled out the possibility of more than one person being involved. Everything the physical evidence pointed to, the two-point entry, the walkie-talkie, the speeding vehicle, the staging property, the construction worker inquiry, was not a collection of theories. It was a documented operational picture, and it belonged to more than one person. Within days of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, notes began arriving, not at the family home, not to law enforcement directly. They arrived at newsrooms. On February 2, the CBS affiliate in Tucson, KOLD, received a ransom demand through its online tip portal. Other media outlets confirmed they received similar communications. The demands called for millions of dollars in Bitcoin. No law enforcement agency publicly authenticated the notes in those first days, but the FBI and Sheriff Nanos confirmed they were treating every communication seriously and investigating each one. What made the pattern immediately unusual to former FBI agents who spoke publicly was this: in genuine kidnapping cases, captors typically establish direct contact with the family or law enforcement quickly. Demands routed through media tip portals, with no confirmed proof of life attached, raised questions from the start. The family addressed it anyway. In a video posted on February 5, Savannah Guthrie spoke directly to whoever was holding her mother. Paraphrasing her words, as a family, we are doing everything we can. We are ready to talk, but we need to know without a doubt that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. A second deadline passed on February 9 with no confirmed contact and no proof of life surfacing publicly. Then Derek Calella inserted himself into the case. Calella, 42, of Hawthorne, California, was a former Los Angeles County employee who had been watching television coverage of the disappearance. On February 4, he used a voice-over Internet Protocol application to create a fake phone number and sent identical text messages to Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Shini. The message read, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." He then made a 9-second follow-up call to another family member. Federal agents traced the account back to an email address associated with Calella. When the FBI arrived at his home, he admitted immediately to sending the messages. He said he found the family's contact information online and was, in his own words, trying to see if the family would respond. FBI Special Agent in Charge Heath Jank was direct in his statement following the arrest. "We have found no evidence linking this to Nancy's case. It was someone trying to profit from it. A total imposter." U.S. Attorney Timothy Kirchin added, The Department of Justice will protect victims and families at all costs, and grief profiteers will be held accountable. Kallela appeared in federal court in Santa Ana, California on February 6 before Judge Karen E. Scott. He was released on a $20,000 bond pending trial. His communications were confirmed to have no connection to the legitimate ransom demand, received by Tucson media 2 days before his texts were sent. Kallela had also been charged separately in October 2025 with felony grand theft in Los Angeles County for fraudulently claiming nearly $10,000 in unemployment benefits while employed by the county. On the forensic side, investigators were building a completely separate picture. DNA other than Nancy's was recovered from inside her home, genetic material that did not belong to her, her family, or anyone who worked at the residence. That evidence was sent to a private DNA laboratory in Florida for analysis. Sheriff Nanos addressed it publicly, choosing his words carefully. "We believe we may have some DNA there that may be our suspect, but we won't know that until it is separated, sorted out, maybe admitted to CODIS, maybe through genetic genealogy." Then came the gloves. A single black glove was recovered from a roadside field approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy's home. An FBI spokesperson confirmed that one of the recovered gloves appeared to match the gloves worn by the suspect in the doorbell camera footage. A DNA profile of an unknown male was recovered from it. That profile was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's national database. No match. The glove DNA also did not match the DNA found inside Nancy's home. On February 17, Sheriff Nanos confirmed both of those results publicly. The investigators then turned the glove DNA over for genealogical analysis. On March 4, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed what News Nation had already reported. The DNA on that glove was traced back to a restaurant employee who works near the location where it was found and had no connection to the investigation. The lead was closed. But the DNA from inside the house was a far more complex matter. C.C. Moore, chief genetic genealogist at Paraben Nanolabs, a scientist who has contributed to solving more than 300 cold cases, explained publicly that the sample is what forensic scientists call a mixed profile, meaning it contains genetic material from more than one person. She said the mixture is common in violent crimes, and in some cases actually increases the likelihood that what investigators have is genuinely from the perpetrator. But then she said something that reframed the entire DNA picture. Speaking on News Nation's The Truth of the Matter podcast on March 15, Moore said that the current bioinformatics software available to the FBI and specialist laboratories may not yet be capable of separating this particular mixture into clean individual profiles suitable for genealogical analysis. When pressed directly on whether the relevant technology simply does not exist yet, Moore agreed. She said, "Right, at least not that DNA Labs International and the FBI has access to." She added that investigators are essentially waiting for the science to advance. Her estimate for how long that could take, up to a year. Moore also introduced a detail that shifted how investigators were thinking about the DNA evidence. The doorbell camera footage shows the suspect with a flashlight in his mouth during the approach to the porch. Moore said publicly, "We think he had that flashlight in his mouth, and I doubt he kept it there for the full 40 minutes he was inside. So as careful as he was to not leave his DNA, he would have taken that out of his mouth and immediately had his DNA all over the outside of that glove. He had to have touched something." That observation, that the suspect's own precautions likely created the very evidence trail he was trying to avoid, became one of the central threads investigators were pulling. Elsewhere, the FBI was working every physical lead simultaneously. The Ozark Trail hiker backpack, sold exclusively through Walmart, became what Sheriff Nanos called one of the most promising leads in the case. Walmart provided investigators with records of every Ozark Trail hiker backpack sold at regional locations over the previous several months. Agents reviewed surveillance footage from Walmart stores across the Tucson area, looking for the suspect, or anyone matching his description purchasing that specific bag. And above the desert, helicopters were circling. Law enforcement deployed what an FBI source described to News Nation as sophisticated FBI technology, a signal sniffer mounted on aircraft, designed to detect the specific Bluetooth frequency emitted by Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker. If she was still alive anywhere within range of those flights, her pacemaker might give her location away. The flights continued for weeks. As of late March 2026, no signal had been publicly confirmed as detected. The lab was still working. The backpack trail was still being followed. And the science that investigators needed to unlock the DNA found inside that house had not yet caught up with the crime. By the time the FBI released its physical description of the suspect on February 12, the internet had already done what the internet does. It had found two names. It had built two profiles, and it had run with both of them far ahead of anything law enforcement had confirmed publicly. What follows is not speculation. It is a presentation of every documented, verifiable fact about the two individuals whose names became central to public discussion of this case. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has officially cleared all members of the Guthrie family and their spouses. No one has been formally named as a suspect by any law enforcement agency. Everything that follows is on the public record. Tommaso Shini was born on June 18, 1975, in San Giovanni Valdarno, a historic medieval town in the province of Arezzo in Tuscany, Italy. He arrived in Tucson in 2006, the same year he married Annie Guthrie, Nancy's eldest daughter. They have one son together named Almo. Shini has lived 4 miles from Nancy's home for 20 years. He teaches 6th grade science and AP biology at Basis Oro Valley Charter School in Tucson. His own personal biography, posted on the Taparulan Cultural Association website and written in his own words, reads, "I was born in San Giovanni Valdarno on June 18, 1975. Since 2006, I have been living in Tucson, Arizona. I write when it happens. I study lizards. I play the electric bass. I make homemade pasta." He plays bass and sings in a Tucson band called Early Black. The band was founded in April 2007. The other members are Dominic Evans on drums and Walter I. Goncalves Jr. on guitar and vocals. In late 2009 and early 2010, the three of them recorded their debut album at Loveland Studios in Tucson with engineer Nathan Sabatino. It was released in 2010 to positive local reviews in the Tucson Weekly. They titled it Life, Love, Love, Murder. On February 7, 1 week after Nancy was reported missing, law enforcement arrived at the home Annie and Shini share in Tucson. The search was conducted with the couple's consent. NBC News confirmed it was not executed under a warrant. The family cooperated voluntarily. Deputies stayed inside for nearly 3 hours. Journalists watching from the street reported seeing camera flashes through the windows. When investigators left, they were photographed wearing blue gloves and carrying brown paper evidence bags, a forensic data extraction device, the kind used to pull data from electronic devices, was documented being brought into the home. Annie's blue Honda CR-V was towed from the property and impounded. As of March 11, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed to Parade that the vehicle had still not been returned to the family. Both Annie Guthrie and Savannah Guthrie submitted to and passed polygraph tests administered as part of the investigation. The results were confirmed by multiple outlets in mid-March 2026. For weeks, Shini said nothing publicly. He did not post a statement. He did not appear in a video alongside his wife and siblings-in-law. Every other member of the Guthrie family placed their face in front of a camera. Savannah posted emotional videos on Instagram. Cameron addressed the kidnapper directly. Annie appeared alongside her siblings repeatedly. Then in mid-February, a brief video clip circulated online, captured by individuals filming outside his home. In the footage, Shini appeared outside, visibly frustrated by the cameras, and the people gathered near his property. It was the first time he had been seen or heard publicly since the night he drove Nancy home. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer shared the clip on X. His first formal public appearance came on March 2, exactly 1 month after Nancy was reported missing, when he walked arm in arm with Annie and Savannah to a memorial outside Nancy's home. When Savannah was asked directly about her brother-in-law during her March 26 Today show interview with Hoda Kotb, she was firm. She said the speculation that someone in her family was responsible was unbearable and piles pain upon pain. She said there were no words. She said no one took better care of her mother than her sister and Tommaso. She said no one protected her mother more than her brother. She described how much harder Nancy's disappearance had been for Annie, Tommaso, and their son Almo, because they were there, every day, for Nancy. They were the ones who made it possible for her to stay in the home she had lived in for decades. Now to the second name. Dominic Aaron Lee Evans is 48 years old. He is an elementary school teacher in Tucson. He is a father. He is married to Andrea Jacobo, who works as a school principal, and he has been Tommaso Shini's bandmate in Early Black since the band formed in April 2007, 19 years. He told the New York Times that he learned about Nancy's disappearance from Instagram and messaged Shini to offer his support. He had no idea what was coming. When the FBI released its physical description on February 12, male, 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10, average build, dark facial hair consistent with a mustache and goatee, online investigators began running comparisons immediately. They pulled old Early Black performance videos. They identified what they believe is a tattoo or marking on Evans' right wrist, the same wrist where former FBI profiler Jim Clement had publicly noted a marking on the suspect in the doorbell footage. Clement's exact words on Fox News were specific. That tattoo, if it is a tattoo, will be able to help them rule in and rule out people. Certainly, it will help the public. Evans' criminal history was surfaced from Pima County court records, charges including burglary, robbery, and a DUI conviction. People showed up outside his home. His address circulated online. He and Andrea hid in their bedroom with the lights off. At one point, their young son spent the night away from home because of safety concerns. Andrea told the New York Times she was scared numb. Evans told the same paper, "I feel like someone has taken my name." When asked why he thought people were accusing him, he said, "I don't know. Monetary clickbait to be relevant entertainment, but there are innocent people that get hurt." Evans voluntarily met with Pima County Sheriff's investigators and spoke with them for approximately 40 minutes. Detectives asked him about the band, his friendship with Shini, and his whereabouts on the night of February 1. He told them he was home with his family. He said he has not been contacted by investigators since that meeting. There is one detail Evans confirmed to Parade that most people circulating his name online did not know. He had met Nancy Guthrie exactly once, in 2011, when he brought one of his children to her home for an Easter egg hunt. Sheriff Chris Nanos expressed sympathy for Evans publicly. He called what Evans experienced horrible. He said those spreading false accusations could face legal consequences. He confirmed that all Guthrie siblings and their spouses had been cleared. He did not clear Evans by name in the same specific way. When pressed, he added only, "I wish I could jump out and defend every single one of them that has been falsely accused." 2 men, one who drove Nancy home and whose consented search produced bagged evidence and an impounded vehicle, one who plays drums in the same band, matches the FBI description and has not been cleared by name. No arrest, no charges, no identified suspect. The investigation remains open. Draw your own conclusions. As of March 30, 2026, 58 days since Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, no arrest has been made. No suspect has been publicly named. Nancy has not been found. The investigation is active. The FBI, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and search and rescue teams all remain engaged. The FBI has received and reviewed more than 18,000 public tips submitted since February 1. Every one of them is being assessed for credibility and actionable information. The reward available for information in this case now exceeds $1.2 million, $1 million from the Guthrie family, $100,000 from the FBI, and an additional $102,500 through the 88 Crime Anonymous Tip Program, including a $100,000 contribution from Milwaukee attorney Michael Huppy. Tips can be submitted anonymously through 1-800-CALL-FBI or through 88 Crime. The investigation has not been without significant turbulence of its own. On March 24, the Pima County Board of Supervisors voted to require Sheriff Chris Nano to submit reports under oath after records surfaced showing disciplinary issues at a previous job and discrepancies on his professional resume. The union representing Pima County Sheriff's deputies passed a unanimous no-confidence vote calling for his resignation. Nanos is simultaneously facing a formal recall effort from county residents. He has not stepped down. He has continued to speak publicly about the Guthrie case and has said directly, "We believe we know why he did this. We believe it was targeted." He has not elaborated on the motive, saying doing so could compromise the investigation. Then on March 26, one of Nano's own deputies was arrested by the Tucson Police Department on a kidnapping charge in a completely unrelated case. Travis Reynolds, 22, was accused of keeping a female detainee in his patrol car and offering to help with her case in exchange for a sexual favor. He appeared in court on March 27. A judge set his bond at $200,000. The Pima County Sheriff's Department fired him immediately. His preliminary hearing is scheduled for April 6. Online speculation briefly connected Reynolds to the Guthrie investigation. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer analyzed the claim publicly and dismissed it directly, concluding that Reynolds does not match the suspect profile, the modus operandi, or the operational sophistication visible in the doorbell footage. Her words were unambiguous. "I don't believe this 22-year-old is Porch Guy." On March 29, Scottsdale police confirmed that a woman's body recovered from a canal near Indian Bend and Hayden Roads was Passion Shores. A 28-year-old reported missing from the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community on March 22. The department confirmed there was no apparent connection to the Nancy Guthrie case. The cause of death remained under determination by the medical examiner. The family has not stopped. On March 22, they issued a new public appeal to Tucson residents, asking people to search their memories and their home security footage for anything relevant to the key dates of January 11, January 31, and the early morning hours of February 1. Savannah shared the appeal on Instagram with the words, "Someone knows how to find our mom and bring her home." She also posted a religious painting alongside the words, "I believe, I believe." In her March 26 Today Show interview with Hoda Kotb, Savannah revealed something that had been private until that moment. Her brother Cameron, who spent his career in the military and worked in intelligence, knew immediately on the morning of February 1 what had happened. She described the phone call. Cameron told her he believed their mother had been kidnapped for ransom. Savannah's response, through tears, was to ask him directly, "Do you think it's because of me?" His answer, she said, was, "Sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe." Savannah told Kotb that she had already known it deep down, and then she said the words that stopped the country. She looked directly at the camera and said, "I just want to say I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry." President Trump called Savannah personally and told reporters aboard Air Force One that the investigation was going very well and that investigators had some strong clues. Savannah Guthrie returns to the NBC Today show on April 6. She said returning gives her purpose. She said her joy will be her protest. Nancy Guthrie was born in Fort Wright, Kentucky in 1942. She raised 3 children alone after losing her husband at 49. She lived in the same Tucson community for over 5 decades. She went to family dinner on a Saturday night and was gone before sunrise. The science is still working. The tips are still coming in. The case is still open. If you are watching this from Tucson or anywhere in southern Arizona, and something is sitting in the back of your mind about January 11, January 23, or February 1, make the call. 1-800-CALL-FBI. The tips are anonymous. The reward is real. And Nancy Guthrie has been gone for 83 days. This is Capital Sentence Files. If this case matters to you, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and share this video. The more people who know every detail of this story, the harder it becomes for whoever did this to stay hidden. We will keep covering this case until there is an answer. Nancy deserves that, and so do you.